It's now my privilege and honor to introduce today's panelists. Our first is Dr. Kimberly Beatty. In 2017, Dr. Beatty became Metropolitan Community College's 8th chancellor. And prior to her move to Kansas City, she held positions at community colleges in Houston, California, and in Virginia. In addition to her many leadership positions across Kansas City civic organizations, she's also been a member of the board of directors of the American Association of Community Colleges. She has been a champion of access and equity. Our second panelist is Tim Dunn. Tim is the chairman and chief investment officer for J.E. Dunn. This, of course, is a 100-year-old family-owned business that serves clients nationwide out of its 26 offices and brings in approximately annual revenues of $6 billion. Tim oversees all real estate and investment activities for the companies. He supports numerous community efforts and sits on several boards here at UMKC, where he received his master's degree, including holding the position of trustee. He also serves on many boards of J.E. Dunn subsidiaries and investments. And then, of course, our third panelist is Craig Ramsey. Craig retired from Accenture after an impressive 35-year career, which included serving on the company's North American leadership team and expanding their corporate citizenship program. He has been a board member and board chair for a number of Atlanta-based organizations, including leading the planning and implementation of the grand opening efforts for the Georgia Aquarium. He has also been involved with his alma mater, Florida State University College of Business, and he now serves as chairman of the board of trustees for the College Baseball Foundation. Welcome, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Janelle, and thank you, panelists. Kinetic has had the distinct honor to work with all three of today's panelists on multiple projects. They are intelligent and generous. Dr. Beatty is a driven visionary leader who quickly enlists other support through her passion and charisma. It was Kinetic's honor to support Dr. Beatty and her unparalleled team of volunteers, fundraisers, as they crushed their initial goals and, in response to and support of her vision, led MCC to its largest, most impactful campaign victory in its 109-year history. Way to go, Dr. Beatty.
Thank you, Matt. All because of you.
I didn't care to say that. Tim has a strong sense of the pulse of the philanthropic community. He has the trust and respect of the organizations and individuals he serves and is able to naturally connect with others to help them understand the impact of their generosity. This is going off script, but Kinetic had its annual retreat and social yesterday and last night. And Tim, we had our social in the brand new Kansas City Zoo Aquarium. And you would not know this, but Tim was an active part of our fundraising team and helped attract a number of significant gifts to make that aquarium possible. So Tim, thank you for your significant gifts. Craig has been a transformational leader in the philanthropic community of Atlanta, where he has led boards through significant change. Craig has a keen perception of donors and their need to understand the impact of their philanthropy, and not yet known by many, but is involved in a significant campaign for a new baseball-related facility in the Kansas City region. So Craig, we're thrilled to have you on board. Thank you for being with us. I'm going to ask each one of you a question, pose the question, then call on you individually to share your response. And as you know from our communication before today, these are all sort of getting your opinions and thoughts about the really compelling research that we just heard presented by Dr. Osili from the Lilly School of Philanthropy. So here's question one. In light of a growing concern regarding nonprofit transparency, what recommendations do you have for nonprofit leaders to help organizations warrant and instill donor confidence? Dr. Beatty, I'll start with you.
Well, thank you, Matt, and thank you so much for having me here. And in all seriousness, to your comment and your introduction, we have had great success, but we had a great partners in you, our foundation board, and I am fortunate to have a great team. And one of the things that your previous speaker focused on, I think, answers this question, with absolutes, and that is trust and community. I have a saying, and it's nothing unique. I'm sure you've heard it before, but say what you mean and mean what you say. I mean, it starts from the top. It starts from the organization's mission statement, its strategic initiatives, its marketing efforts, and its fundraising efforts. People need to believe, and you know, MCC had a challenge in this area because we had some reputational rebuilding to do and that trust. And so the two elements of trust and community really went together. I'm not exactly sure who's in the room, but I have made it my primary goal to get ingrained in the community. I had a great foundation board member who assisted me, Carolyn, assisted me in getting ingrained in this community. And it's through that, because people tend to give, I mean, they give to the business, and you've got to have clear goals, and you've got to have metrics, and you've got to be transparent. All of those things are true, but there is a relationship, and I think she spoke to this as well, that's very important. And I have been able, Kansas City is I'm really fortunate to have come here and lived all over the country and have never experienced the philanthropy to the degree that I have, the philanthropic spirit that I have in this city. But it helped that I was able to build relationships, because people do give to the individual. They make that connection with the individual. If you have all those things in order and you don't have a relationship, you can have the transparency, but if you don't have that relationship where people trust you and believe in you and what that mission is, it's going to be tough.
Thank you, Dr. Beatty. Same question to you, Tim. What recommendations do you have for nonprofit leaders to help organizations warrant and instill donor confidence?
I think Dr. Beatty hit on a lot of them. The only ones I would add, I think clear communication is really important in the process. So upfront, what is your organization, and how can you clearly articulate connecting those dots with the grantor that you're submitting a request for? I know one thing our community impact team uses is Charity Navigator, which really rates these nonprofits on, you know, their accountability and disclosures. So that's another area. You know, be prepared when you're making a grant. The other one is, you know, the financial structure and the board governance. And that's one thing with just our company. We have kind of an inside look at that, but just be prepared and have your ducks in a row when you're submitting, how you're governed, what your structure is. And then, you know, I'll just pile on to what Dr. Beatty said. Have that personal connection to the organization that you're applying for.
Thank you, Tim. Craig, what do you have to share about recommendations for nonprofit leaders to help organizations warrant and instill donor confidence?
Well, most of it's been said. I would add 3 points. But before I add the 3 points, let me also give my sincere appreciation to you, Matt, your entire team, Kinetics, for this opportunity. Also for the Block School. I think this is so cool what you guys do there. When I heard about it, I was like, this is cool. And then it said, well, you'd be a panelist. I said, well, I came to learn today. But it's, you know, and I could go on and on about it because I think it's so important what you're doing there. It's great. But I also like to give a special shout out to Dr. O'Silly. She mentioned baseball. So, you know, everybody loves baseball. So, thanks for having me. The 3 things I would say about the recommendation would be open book. You got to get the dollars in, and the dollars are going somewhere, and they got to be producing some results. And so have that open book mentality of this is what we are, or what we're about. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not, but it's what it is. So just that open book. Number 2 would be a 360 report card. It's one thing to write the numbers down, the metrics, and say, here's what we're doing, but have a little self-reflection about it, but also have it be validated independently to say, this is what the real results are. And so to be able to share that feedback, say, you know, and continue to build on it. And the third, I would say, in addition to communication, I'd say frequent communication. because you don't want to wait too long until things are up or down, but just make sure you're on that regular routine of that. Kind of, I'll take a line from Dr. Beatty of her sort of mantra. Mine is relationships matter. And they can go up and down and things happen, but you got to have that communication open and transparent.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Craig. Thank you all. Those are great insights. I want to ask a question that takes what we've just had you respond to into an area that Dr. Asili really did research, and that is gender differences in terms of perceptions and feelings about the nonprofit sector. Specifically, have you identified notable differences in how men and women perceive and process transparency? If so, what are they? And how can nonprofits address the differences so donors have more confidence in the efficacy of their giving? Dr. Beatty, we'll start with you.
You know, I really struggled with this question, and it may be the sector that I come from and the places that I've worked, but I've not really seen a difference, you know, and I might not be paying attention to it because I'm so focused on just doing what's right and doing, you know, all the things that we shared and that she shared as great strategies. And I just have remained focused on that. So I really haven't noticed that difference, but I probably don't notice.
Sure. Thank you for that. Tim, how about you? Have you noticed differences? And if so, what are they? And how can the sector instill more confidence by being aware of those differences?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm in the same boat. We don't think about philanthropy as a gender standpoint. You know, if it matches, you know, our kind of three core strategic givings, which is empowered people, workforce of tomorrow, and then healthy communities, you know, that's what matters. So we're really not looking at it from a gender standpoint. You know, it goes back to a lot of the same things. Is there clear communication? Do they have a governance structure? Do they have a strategy? And how are they using the dollars? So I struggled with this question too, but you know, to the point, we don't think about it as a gender focus.
Craig, how about you? Any perspective that would differ from or expand in different ways on what Dr. Beatty and Tim have shared?
Yep, I'll similar. I'm glad Dr. Beatty went first. I'll tell you a story when it hit me. It's about just knowing your audience. So we're on a father-son fishing trip. First day, fathers and sons are in the same boat. We have a great trip. It was great. Well, the young guys say, "Hey, we want to do our own little boat, and we'll do against the dads." And so we're out there fishing, and son of a gun, the young guys are catching all the fish, and you know we're over there fishing away, and you know I said something, one of the other guys said something, and the first mate says, "You know, women and children do a lot better when they fish." And I looked at him and said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "They listen." And I turned around and looked at the captain and said, "Captain, who's paying for this trip?" He says, "First mate, listen to him and go catch some fish." But the point being, I don't think there's, you know, I don't see the difference in the gender, but some may do. A person asked a question about how you deal with that next generation, and they're making pronouns and stuff like, hey, go back and look where we were. I remember 1982 when that study started. I was called in and said, "You got to sign your pledge card." I said, "Well, wait a minute. I don't necessarily want to sign the pledge." Well, everybody has to sign the pledge card to give something. So I think we today need to look back and say, well, what did we do about changing things? And then understand there's some people out there that have some differences. So let's embrace it and figure it out.
Excellent. Thank you all for sharing your honest perspective and responses to that question. I want to ask about a framework that Una shared that helps us understand the different things that people give and then your perspective on that. When asked in her panel and the respondents about the types of activities they consider to be forms of philanthropy, which she calls the 5 T's, a large majority considered giving time, 85.2%, talent, 83.8%, and treasure, 72.5% to be important. You remember she added 2, giving tithes and giving testimony, giving your network, which is your ties, your connectivity, and testimony really is your endorsement. Less than 40% included giving ties, 39.7% specifically, or testimony, 39.2%, in their definition of philanthropy. What can nonprofits do to increase donor participation in all 5 areas, but specifically those last 2, ties and testimony? Dr. Beatty, you can go first.
I just think it's what's top of mind and how people prioritize. And I think we need to reprioritize. We just had an outstanding Martin Luther King luncheon, and I met the gentleman who I've forgotten his name, but I run into so many people who have are successful in our community, like this guy who calls the games for the Chiefs, and they come up to me and they say, I went to MCC. They give this great story of what their encounter was. And I was like, I need to get you on video, and I'll pass the card along but that's not our initial go-to. Because those testimonies, we know word of mouth. I was just in a restaurant yesterday, day before yesterday, anyway, and the food, it's a famous restaurant. I won't mention its name, but the food, I ordered a pork shank and I couldn't even get my knife through it. It was like overcooked. And I went online to look at what the comments were before going. But what do people typically do? They make a decision based upon word of mouth or what people say about that restaurant. And, I was talking with folks at the table and saying that often when you're given a survey, if your service was amazing, rarely do you stop. I mean, you might, but rarely do people stop to make a statement about it. I think that testimony piece is so huge, and because people relate to stories. And I know in our world that we have so many stories because we have impacted so many lives, but we have not done that. We have not leveraged. I think people are so focused on getting the gifts in the door and not necessarily focusing on the testimony. When Matt was working with us, we have a great foundation board we're intentional, that have ties in the community. And I would say our board does a pretty good job in making the connection to the community and ties. So I think we did okay there, but I just really think testimony is an area where we, in every aspect that we do at MCC, but especially in our foundation, to hear those stories. So this year at the luncheon, if you were there, you saw the videos of those students and their story. And I'm certain that impacts the giving. I mean, so it's not for that reason, because it's also about the transparency and the trust as well.
Absolutely. Tim, how about you? What can nonprofits do to increase donor participation in all 5 of those T areas, but maybe specific thoughts about ties and testimony?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. I think it's got to be authentic in terms of the person that's supporting the organization. Let them see what the core mission is. And so once they get that authentic, natural connection, they're gonna be praising. And the word of mouth, I think, is so critical in the community, not just on the fiduciary side, but make them see the core work the nonprofit does. And I think that's been personal to me. I mean, Matt, you mentioned it at the zoo. It was an ask for testimony, but then I got to see how many people this will touch. How many kids won't get to see the ocean that they can do it right in this city? So I just think it's that connection and that authenticness of what these nonprofits are really doing and how they're impacting it. You're going to get people naturally giving testimony and opening up their network. So I've seen that very personal for me, and it works.
Excellent. Thank you, Tim. Craig, the 5 T's, and do you have another story for us?
Oh, we'll be here all day, Matt. So, but I think what I would add on, because I'm not going to be duplicative, I would say we all have to listen, and you have to understand that individual where they are, because you want that testimony. You want those ties, but you have to listen to really understand how they get comfortable with that. And once they get comfortable with it, and Tim just gave an example, personal example, once you as an individual get comfortable that that's meaningful to me, then I'm willing to go out and share that with my network, my ties, but I'm also willing to put my name and my personal reputation on the line. And sometimes that asks, we ask for money, but really I'm asking for your reference. I'm asking for you to spend time. Will you do like Dr. Beatty said? Will you take the time to make the video for us? So that my suggestion there is you got to be bolder on those asks, and we got to ask bigger, because you can always say no to it, but we have to learn how to ask in those situations to do a better job of that.
Great point.
Matt, can I add something else? I am cultivating a donor, and we have a relationship. And I was having a cocktail with her, and she shared that she gives to another university, and she went and pulled out these notes that she receives. It's a different type of testimony, but this school, I was like, man, I should have thought of this. This school has students write letters to the donors so that they can understand and see how their gift worked for them personally. So I think that's a different type of testimony that she mentioned, and your speaker mentioned about communication and follow-up and so forth. And we've heard that in this panel. I thought that is a unique way to have a student who got a scholarship as a result of your gift and have them write a letter to say, this really was life-changing for me. It allowed me to get childcare. It allowed me to put tires on my car so that I could get to school. I mean, it's one, building trust, and it's also building the momentum and the relationship in a different way.
Excellent. We've already got our first question for our next part of this panel from the room. We're going to hold it for just a minute because we have a couple more minutes with me getting to ask questions. And then we're going to open it up to everybody, all 400 or 500 people that are here in person and online. So I want to ask a different question that I think you might have really interesting perspectives on from different vantage points. So in the respondents that Una sampled, she asked them whether they or anyone in their immediate family had received services from a charitable organization in the past year. Only 5.4% said they had. Now, we know people interact with nonprofits daily through healthcare providers, religious institutions, higher ed, youth groups, arts, many more. How can the nonprofit sector and individual organizations better distinguish themselves and educate the public on what nonprofits accomplish? And is this related in any way to the need for measured outcomes and greater transparency? Dr. Beatty, we'll start with you.
I think that you have to find that uniqueness of what it is that you're doing. I don't know if I would lump all nonprofits in together. Really quick, I'll say that we started our campaign during COVID. And Matt, I was, I don't know, Matt. I don't know. Is this a smart move? And we didn't know at the time. I mean, because COVID had just happened. I mean, we had it teed up and everything, and COVID had just happened. We didn't know what was going to be the outcome, but what we knew is that we had a product, and that we had a good product, and we knew our product. And I think we focused on that unique element of what programs and what our pillars were for the campaign that in retrospect was what helped with that connection more so. And who knew that as a result of COVID, that workforce was going to be the major draw and that was our spot. So I just think you have to focus on the uniqueness of what you bring to it, what your nonprofit brings to it. And I struggle with lumping them together in that. And I think that was what was our success.
Well, it's a great point.
Success.
Yeah. And what you're saying really is there's an ability and an opportunity to use the environment in which you find yourselves. And that's not the same from year to year. And when you began your campaign, we were just starting a pandemic. And so it provided a natural opportunity to demonstrate the importance, the critical nature of job training. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Tim, for you, I would suspect this is an interesting question because you build every kind of nonprofit facility all over the country. And by the way, I didn't say J.E. Dunn built the aquarium as well. So that's the amazing commitment that it brings, both service and excellent construction. How do you think nonprofits can do a better job of making the case to those that use their services that we're nonprofit, we're not a for-profit entity?
Yeah, I think it's a tough question, but as you think about it as a person, you often think about crisis services for nonprofits, and it's so much more than that. So I know our community impact team does a great job of championing and talking about the great organizations we support. Maybe the donors need to do that more, because I know there's a lot. Most of these nonprofits are not trying to toot their own horn, right? And nor do they have the budget to do that. But I think, as I look at this from a donor side, maybe that community needs to do more to talk about the great impacts these organizations are making. And I know Nancy Phelps on our team does a fantastic job talking about, oh my gosh, we made a donation to this organization and they're doing fantastic things. But just from that's the way I looked at this question, Matt, was maybe the donor community needs to talk more with others to championing their cause.
It's a great point. And maybe back to the earlier point about testimony, what a nonprofit can do is invite its donors to do that. So there is a way we can facilitate that. Craig, what are your thoughts?
I would exactly align with that. I'd say ambassadors. And that's what you need, because the nonprofit can say it, they can say all the great things we're doing, but you need both the people that receive the goods and services, whatever it is, and the results they're having, but also the people that gave. Like Dr. Beatty was saying, that the person that gave the money got something back from those kids and how it impacted them. I will tell you a story that we did years ago. Jason, on your team, you'll remember this from United Way. We were looking at the homeless situation, and we're raising money and doing a lot of stuff and trying to get more and more people to get the word about what we're trying to do. Well, we finally, a group of us got on the bus with the experts, went out to the streets, trying to get the people to join us, come on the bus, let's try to help you get to the next step. I'm over there working with this one guy. Finally get a tap on the shoulder from one of the people that do this for a full-time basis. The experts said, Craig, they're not ready yet. We're going to be here. We're going to come back. They're just not ready yet. Well, we got back on the bus, took a couple people with us, got back. I got out and I looked up at one of the gentlemen that we had got on the bus. And the look in his eye, I'll never forget, of how impactful that was. He was on his first step to recovery. So what we started doing was getting all the donors to go and do the hands direct work to see what it takes to make that happen. And that was so impactful because now we've got a lot of, hundreds of people explaining the message of how that's important, as opposed to just a nonprofit. So again, it's back to the ask. We need to ask people for that testimony, ask people for their engagement. And then once they do that, they will have those ambassadors.
That is excellent. Excellent. All three of you. Thank you for those insights. We only got through a fraction of the questions I wanted to ask, but we're now at the point where Karen Cox and Jason Wood are going to, in this room, receive and pose to you questions from those on site. And Janelle Johnson is in our chat room, and we'll do the same from that part of our audience. We're going to start in this room. Who has questions for Dr. Beatty, for Tim, for Craig? This is your chance to get inside their heads and get their wisdom. Melanie, would you like to start with yours? If you were so patient. Yes.
Thank you. Hi, Dr. Beatty. I had the pleasure of working with Billy Dunn on your team, an absolute class act. Thank you for that. I have a question for all of you, starting with Dr. Beatty. In the digital age, we are also trying to balance two words that you and Tim used, which is trust and authenticity. Can you please speak, as someone who loves the English language, can you speak to when it's appropriate to use the AI of generating content versus the EQ of those personal letters of outreach, such as the students you heard about?
Wow. So I happen to be in New Orleans at a workforce development institute, and the key topic here has been semiconductors and AI. So we have this week been talking about how AI is going to change and has begun changing every aspect of the work we do. And I've just recently begun to think about, they were saying, well, you won't, I'm not saying I agree to this. So nobody leave here saying, oh, Dr. Beatty's going to get rid of all of the administrative assistants. But, they were talking about how jobs and staff and how everything is just going to change. And as I think about the work that is so relationship driven with donors, I'm not sure. I'd still have to think more deeply about the benefit of having any AI. I mean, maybe in the research aspect of donors, or some aspect in that way where artificial intelligence could be helpful. But I think the connection is so important that, even in these the workshop I was in yesterday, they said AI is good, but there's so much incorrect information that comes from it. There still has to be a human eye on it. And so I think there's aspects of the operations, maybe behind the scenes, and some of the things that we do where AI could be helpful. But if you want to build trust and confidence, that relationship is it's all about relationships, or it ain't about nothing. I had a pastor say that years ago in a different context, but it is so true.
I would add just on, I was thinking about that question. AI can be used. We have, donor portal forms. Maybe you can use AI there, to help fill in, to do, what we require on the front end. But the relationship and the authenticity about what your mission is and how you're helping the community, you cannot AI that. So, I've been playing around with the AI. It does sound very robotic. You got to put a personal feel to it. So that would just be my 2 cents there.
Embrace it. Embrace it. The technology. Leverage it. It's going to keep coming at us. So it ain't going away. So what you have to do is get out front of it and figure out how's the best way to do it. But the one thing we can never do is leave that personal connection, that human to human contact, that handwritten note, because it all matters. It goes deep, way deep in us, because we all know who really has the plan. It's just us out here trying to figure it out and following it. And so that relationship, we are taught that's what we're supposed to have. So we can never leave that personal relationship.
Excellent. I'm suspecting there are many questions in this room. I'm also aware of our time. Janelle Johnson is connected to the many in our Zoom room. And so, Janelle, let me ask you if you have questions from our Zoom audience for our 3 amazing panelists.
Sure. I have a message here from Christy. I have several questions, but Christy asked, any advice on networking and the best way to connect with new relationships?
I'll jump in on that. I've had a lot of success in just being wherever any event that's in town, gotten very civically engaged. Kansas City culturally is very different than other cities that I've lived in. I call it a table talk town in that the coffee, it's a coffee town, and grabbing coffee and being bold and stepping into that. My husband's in commercial real estate and is starting his business here, and he's joined all these chambers, and to, make those connections almost unintentionally, but intentionally, maybe strategically unintentionally, that those chambers, just getting out and being bold, and you can't, it's difficult to be an introvert and be in this work. And I think that's why I've had a lot of success at it, because I will come up to you and talk to you. And now it's to the point where people are like, oh, here she comes. So, but it is a coffee. I think there's an intimacy, especially that I've noticed about the Midwest. And so if you're going to, when you have those opportunities to talk to people, listen. And then I find intersections. It might be, I remember the first time I talked with Mr. Sherman, and I found out that he was on the Truman Museum board, I think it was at the time. I happen to love, it's a hobby of mine to go to all the president libraries in the country and museums. I know it's nerdy, but it was a connection point. And so I think you have to step out there and whether that's your comfort zone or not, find ways to engage and meet new people and have coffee.
Kansas City is a big, small town. I mean, to Dr. Beatty's point, there are so many, short levels of connection. So what she said, what Craig said, be bold, ask. People are trusting, kind, usually have an open door until you give them a reason not to. So I think a lot of the civic organizations here are so connected. And people love to give in Kansas City. I do think that is overlooked a little bit of just how philanthropic people do want to give back. So be bold.
Yeah. On the new relationships, I'd just say be authentic, be you, be natural. One of the things I do is just, what are those just handful of questions to start the conversation? And just ask them, how are you doing? How's your business? How's your family? Ask them, what's bothering you? What challenges do you have? What's going well? What can I do to help? It's just have a natural, and that's your own style. You got to be you and have it be that way. Just have that conversation. I'll tell you a quick story. Somebody about giving in town. I had an opportunity, Fred Merrill, the Merrill Development, that's where we're putting the new Hall of Fame. I had a chance to sit down, he and his wife, Candy. I hadn't met her before. We're sitting talking. I asked her a couple of questions. Oh my gosh. Back to Dr. Bates' point. Okay. Oh, Candy, you were Olympic gold medalist. Oh my gosh. In 1984, and your teammate was, Tina Perez. Oh, and y'all still best friends? Oh, and her son is Michael Conforto, MLB star. Oh, and that's Mike Fiore's. He's an agent with Scott Burrows. He's that, and all of a sudden, next thing we know, in just a natural conversation, we've got all these connection points. So I just say, just be you, and just ask the questions.
Excellent. I am so sorry I have to do this, but we are nearing the end of our time. I want to say thank you to our panelists, and I'm going to give you a moment, just a second, to share your final thoughts. This has been an absolutely fantastic conversation, and we're so grateful for each of your time and for your willingness to share your honest career summing perspectives, which are so valuable to all of us. So thank you. We do want to now give each of you about a minute and a half to share your final thoughts with our group. And so we'll start with you, Dr. Beatty. Final thoughts for our group assembled today.
You know, I'm seeing some of the comments come through the chat. Many times people have heard me say, I would have never imagined that I would be in Kansas City. It's the best decision that I've made. And the reason I say that is if you haven't lived outside of Kansas City, you don't have appreciation for the caring, for the outstanding philanthropy, for the giving, and the relationships and connectivity that exist here. I think people take that for granted. And as somebody who's not from here, but I believe now I can say I'm from here because I've been here 7 years now, that I am Kansas City, that it is a place of true connection and it's genuine connection and caring. So I don't want to say leverage that, but recognize that as you go on your journey, that there's real opportunity, genuine opportunity here.
Thank you. Tim, your final thoughts.
Yeah, just an honor to be invited to participate with the other panelists and Kinetic for you all putting it on. Maybe there's not enough of this that we celebrate and talk about this. I was very well educated and informed by the featured speaker before us. So that was very helpful for me. One thing I would leave everybody with, and we're really proud of this at JE Dunn, we started an employee match program in 2020 during the pandemic, and the amount of growth we've almost seen double the dollars just in a short 3 or 4 years. So community impact and philanthropy means a lot to our company, and it's starting to get very personal for our organization of how they'll put $1 in and we'll put $1 in. So it's amazing what philanthropy can do, and we love to see how we can impact the community. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you for all you do. Craig, your final thoughts. You're muted, Craig.
It was much better on mute, I'll assure you. But thank you very much to echo opportunities for Kinetics to bring us in, and for the university to have us, and the dean to be there, and the school and block what you guys are doing. I was really fascinated with our speaker. I thought she did a great job, and I'm glad we got the materials that we'll take away from us. I'll go back to the relationships matter point. And my gosh, just to be part of what this is going to be great. We're looking forward to come to Kansas City. Promised my wife I wouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Something like, I'm going to take a plane, or I'm going to take a train, or I'm walking. But we're coming. So we're excited to be there. But what I'd also like to do is really thank each one of you for what you do every day. Because whether or not you're on the nonprofit side, or you're on the businesses, or you're an individual, we're all involved in this together. But for you folks that do this on a full-time basis, thank you for your passion. Thank you for caring. And thank you for making a huge difference. We appreciate you having us.
Thank you to all of you. And I would say to all those at the summit, if you have questions you were not able to ask, if you would email those to info@kineticfundraising.com, we will see if we might find an opportunity to get some further input from our panelists to share back with you. So thank you all so much. I'm now going to turn it over to Julie Klima, who's going to wrap things up for us. Thank you again.
Thanks. I can't believe I have to follow this excellent panel and this fantastic speaker, but I promise I will keep it short because I know I'm the only thing between you all and a break. But I'm Julie Klima, and I'm the managing director here at the Midwest Center for Nonprofit Leadership. And we are the nonprofit community and engagement outreach arm of the Block School. And we offer programs, research, and services to support a thriving and effective nonprofit sector. And we just are so delighted to have all of you here. I want to echo all of the thanks to our speakers. Craig, you stole my words as a 20-year veteran of the nonprofit community. I just really want to thank each and every one of you for being here and joining us. Your dedication to creating positive change in the world is really what makes gatherings like this truly inspiring. And I'm always energized when I get to meet new members of the nonprofit community here in Kansas City. I'm glad to hear that after 7 years, I can consider myself a Kansas Citian, because like Dr. Beatty, I made the very best decision of moving here, and I'm just thrilled to be here. Just wanted to say that as we leave here today, I hope that we each carry this spirit of this conversation forward as we seek to leverage the power of philanthropy to foster this bright future that Dr. Osili said that we have, as we foster a culture of giving, collaboration, and impact. And for those of you that are here in person, we encourage you to take Dr. Beatty's advice and continue the conversation. Introduce yourself to someone. You can join us for some great conversation starters that Craig shared. You can try those out as we have refreshments next door. And so now, as my colleague Dave Renz likes to say, go forth and do good work.